What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Limited Resources. This episode number 676. My name is Marshall. I'm one of your Limited Resources, and joining me on the line all the way from Denver, Colorado, it's Luis Scott-Vargas. Luis, what's up, buddy? How's your week been?
Oh, it's good. Everyone's sick, at all times. So there is that.
I decided to join that crowd myself. I've got a bit of a cold. Thankfully, it's not COVID. I just have a head cold. But the show must go on. I've been drafting like a madman since I'm stuck at home anyway, and I've got a lot to say about the format here. We've got the Brothers War format overview show for you today. We're going to go over our first thoughts and take a big look at what's going on with this format. Is it fast? Is it slow? What strategies should you be going for? And which ones shouldn't? We're going to talk about all of that today on Limited Resources. First, though, let's talk about our sponsors, tcgplayer/channelfireball.com. Channel Fireball and TCG Player have teamed up to create the subscription every Magic player needs. Get exclusive CFB Pro content and free shipping and tracking on direct by TCG Player orders, plus bonus bucks and awesome promos at tcgplayer.com. For this, you must pay $6.99 per month. So good deal, especially if you use that direct by TCG Player thing, get that shipping for free. And of course, it's always good to get your hands on some CFB Pro content, some of the best content in the game, there to help you get better and improve. If you do pick up something over at TCG Player, we've got a link in the show notes. If you'd click on that link, that lets them know that we sent you over to help support the show as an affiliate link, and we do appreciate it. Show's also brought to you by you via the Patreon. It's patreon.com/limited resources. And that's, of course, the place where you can go to support your favorite content creators. And if you want to do so, we've got the Patreon all set up, and you get access to a bunch of cool stuff, including a thank you card and a sticker in the mail, no matter what level you signed up for, as well as access to the Patreon feed where we put up our Patreon question of the week. We also do it for our Q&A episodes. And as you work your way up the tiers, we also do an unedited version of the show, as well as access. Everybody gets this actually to the live recording of the show on top of that. So thank you to everybody on the Patreon for supporting us. It really does mean a lot. We've got a Patreon question of the week here. It comes from Harry, who says, "Hello, Marshall and Luis. I know you guys have mentioned poker in the past, but are there other classic card games that you guys enjoy?"
Oh, when I was in the Boy Scouts, we'd play stuff like Hearts, and that was pretty fun. But I haven't done that for quite some time.
You ever played cribbage?
Some small amount.
Yeah, my grandma used to like to play, so I would play with her, and I enjoyed it. But I was kind of a kid. I didn't really know what I was doing. I don't know. I don't really like games that much.
You're not as much of a gamer as people might think.
No, I'm not. I really do get super into, I was super into poker, super into this, and there's been a few video games over the years that I've really got into, but it's been a long time for those. And the main thing that makes me know that I'm not quite built the same way as some people when it comes to picking up and playing games is that it takes me a while to learn it, and I really have to kind of go deep to understand it. And then I can really enjoy it. It's just that I find that just picking up a game every once in a while isn't as fun for me. I really like the deeper aspects of a game, and I like, having a good understanding of what's going on strategically and stuff. And I find that if I only play every once in a while, I can't get up to speed on it. And so then I'm just kind of less interested in it. But yeah, there's been a few, and you mentioned poker, Harry, and that was certainly a big part of my life for a while. I don't really play anymore though. Okay, so thanks for that question, Harry. So what we're going to do for this is we're going to start off by doing 2 crack-a-packs, and that'll give us an idea of kind of where Luis and I are at. We've only had a brief chat before the show about where we're at with the format, what we've been winning with, or what we've enjoyed playing, and this will give us an idea of that as well. So let's jump right in. Our first card up is Power Stone Fracture. This card's done pretty well. This is the one in a black sorcery. As an additional cost to cast it, you sack an artifact or creature, and you destroy a creature or planeswalker.
Good card. Not too unhappy to pick it up early. Yeah,
super solid. It does the thing. Aeronaut's Wings is next. This is the 2 mana equipment. Equipped creature gets +1/+0 and has flying, and you can equip it for 2.
This card, I think, is not great. You don't usually want to spend this much mana to not really affect the board. Obviously, you do have some effect on the board, but it's not as much as you would like.
Yeah, this is more like a stopgap if you realize that you've got a bunch of big green creatures and no real way to end the game if the board gets stalled out. but definitely not a place to start.
Not a lot of stalled boards here.
No, that's for sure. And this next card is part of the reason why. Sibling Rivalry. 3 and a red, sorcery, gain control of target artifact or creature until end of turn. Untap it, it gains haste, and you make a tapped Power Stone token to boot. Boy, I've drafted a lot of these already, Luis.
Yeah, it's a card you can get late. It's very strong. I would not take it over Power Stone Fracture because I'd rather start with the Power Stone Fracture, but Sibling Rivalry is a good card. The decks that want it are ideally getting their value by picking it up, in the middle to late pack, wheeling it sometimes even.
Yeah, and this is a little bit of a hint at least where I and Luis are early in the format, which is red-black. When you see a card, a threaten effect is what we call these. What was the old card called?
Threaten.
Oh, what was the newer one called?
Act of Treason.
Yeah, Act of Treason. So, thank you. Threaten effect for boomers, zoomers might call it an Act of Treason. Whenever you see these type of effects, you should always put a little checkbox next to it to make sure that there's not really good, cheap, playable sacrifice outlets in the format, because that can upgrade Sibling Rivalry from a steal your guy, oh, I killed you, to a steal your guy, oh, I killed it, and turn it into even an attack plus a removal spell, in which case these type of cards jump up significantly in value, mainly because you can pick them up late, yet they're a really important piece. And as it turns out, this format definitely supports that type of thing. So Sibling Rivalry is a card you need to pay attention to. And you also, by the way, need to be very aware of it when you're playing as well. Another card that's done well for me, Mishra's Juggernaut. This is the 5-mana 5/3 trample that has to attack each combat of Fable, and it's got Unearth for 5 and a red. This thing just piles on a heck ton of damage.
Yeah, it is a very solid card, and I'm usually pretty happy to play it in any of my red-based decks.
This is a card that kind of makes me sad, because there's a lot of really big, flashy, cool artifact creatures and stuff that you can cast with prototype and everything, but I feel like this card's the bar, meaning like, yeah, that's really neat. You can do all this cool stuff with that, but it's probably just better just casting Mishra's Juggernaut and smashing your opponent with it. And it's like, dang, I really wanted this to be the format that would support, the battle cruiser stuff, but a lot of times a card like this just gets the job done. Next is really excellent combat trick, Gaia's Gift. This is the 1 and a green instant. You put a +1/+1 counter on a creature you control, and it gains reach, trample, hexproof, and indestructible until end of turn. Man, they just kind of went all out with this and pushed the boundaries on the combat trick. And this thing has seen extensive play, and it's very strong.
Yeah, it's one of the cards that will win most combats, will at the very least be a draw where you get a counter off of it, and it can also stop any removal spells. So it's the card you don't really want them to have, because in the normal scenario, we often say like, just block on turn 3 or turn 4. It'll use their turn. You're going to trade for the trick anyway. But now they get a +1/+1 counter out of the deal. And that's pretty significant difference,
Somebody also got me with the reach on it. Just I attack my flyer, and they're just like, give my guy reach and block. And it's like, yeah, all right, that works too. That's probably the least common application, but it's a thing as well. Ashnod's Intervention is next. This is black for an instant until end of turn. Target creature gets +2/+0 gains and gains. Whenever this creature dies, put it into exile from the battlefield and then return it to its owner's hand. Or is put into exile from the battlefield, return it to its owner's hand.
Not a big fan of this one. It doesn't give you the mana advantage that you're looking for on combat tricks, because it bounces the creature back. It's got the whole ETB thing going on, but that's not enough for me to want to put this card in my deck. Yeah,
I have not been super impressed by it. There's just better options. Military Discipline. This card has been better. This is an enchantment aura with flash. It enchants a creature, and when it enters the battlefield, the enchanted creature gains first strike until end of turn, and the enchanted creature gets +1/+0. This is the type of thing. Yeah, you put this on like Mishra's Juggernaut or something, and it's a real problem.
Yeah, and a big part of it is just you're going to spend 1 mana to win a combat and get a little left over. That's just a really good deal.
Yeah, it is. And the 1 mana is really the key here to Military Discipline, but this card has overperformed for sure. And by the way, if you start to notice the cards that we're talking about a lot, 2 combat tricks, an aggressive creature, something that steals your guy. It's like, okay, yeah, you can start to get an idea where this format's going. Next is Lotnam Adept. This is the 3 and a blue 3/3. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, it gets a +1/+1 counter.
It's
Medium.
I've had it in some blue-black decks that draw a bunch of extra cards. But even then, what often happens is you play this, you get a +1/+1 counter on it, and it either eats a removal spell or they just still trade for something mid-size because it costs 4 mana. Right. So it's not like when you trade a 4/4 one of these for a Mishra's Juggernaut, you feel like you got an edge. You didn't.
Right. And the other problem with it is that even when it picks up 2 counters, it's sometimes not big enough because people are casting 6, 7, 8 mana spells in this format.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I have it as a D. I don't play it unless I'm really doing the thing. Unleash Shell is next. This card's been pretty good actually too. It's 3 red for an instant, which I forgot in my first draft, by the way. And it does 5 damage to a creature or planeswalker and 2 damage to that permanent's controller. It just piles on a bunch of damage.
Yeah, it's fine. It is still a 5 mana removal, so it's not like I want multiples of these. And if I've got a couple removal spells, I won't tend to play it. I've, for example, had a lot of black-red decks at this point, and Unleash Shell is not high on my pick order for those decks because you have all these other good removal options.
Yeah, you have better options, but I'll run one, and the 2 damage adds up big time. Next is our first uncommon. It's Evangel of Synthesis, and this is the blue-black 2/3. And when it ETBs, you get to loot, and then as long as you've drawn 2 or more cards this turn, it gets +1/+0 and has Menace.
It's a really good reason to be in blue-black. A good aggressive 2-drop that gives you some value when you play it. Pretty beefy stats.
I just find that it doesn't fit. Like, I'm not going to not play it because I want a 2-drop that loots, but like it's been way too many times that I've triggered the ability, after it's been on the battlefield and have just chosen not to attack with it because blue-black, as usual, tends to lend itself towards a more controlling shell rather than some type of, getting in there with my menace creature or whatever. And so, yeah, so I feel like it's like I never cut it from blue-black. So what's your experience?
The blue-black draw 2 deck is like, it's got like your winged paratroopers or whatever, the winged commando, the 2/2 prowess, and the Evangel of Synthesis, Trench Stalker. Like, I'm into this. I think you can actually attack pretty nicely. I don't like the blue-black control decks. I have not found them to be as good as just playing a blue-black curve deck and trying to win with like a Trench Stalker.
Yeah, I don't like the blue-black control decks, but that's what I've put this in. But also, like, I think the 2/2 flying prowess is really bad, and like I never play it.
Oh, so. I like it in a couple different decks.
Okay. Next is Battery Bearer. This is the 2 blue-green 3/4, and it says creatures you control have tap, add colorless. This mana can't be spent to cast a non-artifact spell, and whenever you cast an artifact spell with mana value 6 or greater, you draw a card.
I mean, it's a good card for blue-green, but that's another archetype which I have not liked very much. It's not that easy to end up with a successful blue-green ramp deck, even when it looks like you have all the pieces together.
Yeah, I've enjoyed the archetype, but I wouldn't have it in the top archetypes. Like, I like playing it. I think you can win with it. I think if you get a Battery Bearer, it helps out a lot. But man, you got to kind of be all in, right, on like ramp stuff early and then just, 6+ drops going down the line. I mean, 6 drops for Battery Bearer are good, but just in general, you want 6, 7s, and 8s and stuff. And that does not always come together, where it feels like the more assertive decks do more often, they're more often able to just put their game plan into play. Still, I like Battery Bearer. It'd be on my list here. What would you take here? We still have one more uncommon, a rare, and then the retro artifact. But just at this point, where are you at?
I'm probably just taking Power Stone Fracture.
Okay.
I mean, I do read this as more of a black-red card, but you can put it in blue-black. You can put it in black-white. Like, you can put it in any black combination because there are a lot of different ways to get that going.
Yeah. Okay. Last uncommon is Mishra Excavation Prodigy. This is the 2 and a red 2/1 haste, and you can pay 1, tap it, and discard a card to draw a card. And then whenever you discard 1 or more artifact cards, you add double red.
Yeah.
Once per turn.
I'm not that impressed with Mishra. I mean, I would play it in my red decks, but I'm not like looking at this as like, oh, I want to get this card in.
Me neither. In fact, this one and the regular blue Urza have been kind of disappointments. They're fine, but I don't know. They're not really anything you need to prioritize. Our retro artifact is Thorn of Amethyst.
That's a brick.
But we did get A decent rare here, Tokasia's Welcome. That's the one that you and I had talked about on the set review. It's the 2 and a white enchantment. Whenever one or more creatures with mana value 3 or less enters the battlefield under your control, draw a card, and that can only happen once per turn.
Yeah, I like Tokasia's Welcome. I would just take that here.
Yeah, I think so too. I played against it. I actually have it in the deck that I drafted before we started recording, and that'll be my first time actually playing with it. But I've played against it enough, and I'm like, yeah, that's doing the thing. You were definitely right about that one. I would take it.
Yeah, seems fine.
All right, let's do another pack here. Our first card off is Trench Stalker.
I mean, I wanted to talk about this card. Now is as good a time as any. This card's good. Mm-hmm. It's not a bomb. You'll still get them 7th pick, but it's pretty meaty. It's a 4 or 5. It's not an artifact, so it doesn't get like disenchanted or raised to the ground. And it's not hard to draw a second card, at which point a lifelink Death Touch is probably taking out 2 of their thin things and gaining you 4, or just clocking them for 4 points of lifelink damage. And yeah, I'm happy with both of those.
Yeah, it's also nice that you can trigger it on your opponent's turn. You know, if you have like, what is it called? Stern Learning. What is this stupid card? The 2 and a blue. Draw
Stern
2.
Lesson
or something like that, where you can really mess with combat if you happen to have that set up. And that happens all the time. I like Trench Stalker. Next is Machine Over Matter. This is the bounce spell, the 1 and a blue instant. Spell costs 1 less to cast if you control an artifact creature and you return a non-land permanent to its owner's hand.
I am not super thrilled with this one. I haven't found blue to be the best color, and the format being so aggressive, it might make you think bounce is good, but it also means that people are playing a lot of cheap creatures, and bouncing cheap creatures is generally not that effective. The most effective place I've seen this get played is in blue-white soldiers.
Okay. Just where you could use it as a get out of the way and kill you.
But even then, you'd rather have prison sentence or military discipline or any number of other cards.
Yeah, I have not been impressed by Machine Over Matter. Next is Mishra's Juggernaut. We talked about that. There's also a military discipline in this pack. We talked about that one too. Argothian Sprite. This is the 1 and a green 2/2 that can't be blocked by artifact creatures, which comes up kind of often. And then you can pay 7 mana to put 2 counters on it. +1/+1.
Yeah, it's fine. I mean, you're going to put it in your green decks, I think, way more often than not. But it's not a card I'm like looking to take early. None of these cards are really.
Yeah, that's how I feel too. Power Stone Fracture. Okay, there's something we could take. Whirling Strike. This is the 1 and a red instant. Target creature gets +2/+0 and gains first strike and trample until end of turn.
Yeah, I like Whirling Strike. I mean, again, I'm not taking this early, but this card has delivered on its promises of being a pretty good combat trick.
Yeah, this one to me is like right on that bar, especially in black-red, where you really do kind of need like all the synergy cards you can have, and this one isn't that. It's like right on the border between like, yeah, sometimes it makes a cut, sometimes it doesn't. But when you do cast it, it is very effective. Next is Curate. This is the 1 and a blue instant Surveil 2 and draw a card. I have not liked Curate.
Yeah, so there are decks that want extra draws, right? The blue-black deck, chief among them. But there's enough ways to do that don't involve playing a card that has absolutely no effect on the board.
Right.
Versus even something like an Elsewhere Flask will leave an artifact in play, which is useful for some other reason.
Yes.
And Curate just doesn't do any of that.
Right. Yeah. It just doesn't hit the bar to have a home. Next is Stone Retrieval Unit. This is the 4 mana 2/3 construct, and when it ETBs, you get a Power Stone token.
This is like the poster child of like what not to do in this format. Like this is not what's going on. Playing this is like you're just gonna miss out on too much mana for not enough effect. Your opponent played a 2-drop, which can get around this. Like it's I started the format thinking like, oh, this is a cool little ramp. Leave something on the board. Not the way to do it.
No, it is way, way, way too slow. Argivian Avenger is our first uncommon. This is a 6 mana shapeshifter, and you can pay 1, and it says until end of turn, it gets -1/-1 and gains your choice of flying, vigilance, death touch, or haste.
I've found the card to be effective while it's in play, but there's no shortage of big, expensive artifacts to sink mana into in this set. And I think this is, on balance, worse than like a big Unearth or big Prototype artifact. So I certainly wouldn't take this over Power Stone Fracture.
Yeah, I would still be on Fracture here as well. Though like you said, when it's in play, it actually does things. It really does. It's fine.
I'd hope my 6-mana card does.
Yeah, some of them don't. Next is Yoshin Dissident. This is the green-white 1/1, and whenever an artifact ETBs under your control, you put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control.
It's a threatening card.
Yeah.
Definitely one that has to be killed. And yeah, it's a card that I think is generally worth going into if you get it early enough. I would still take Power Stone Fracture. These packs might make it sound like I think Power Stone Fracture is the best card ever. I don't, but I do think it is good, and I think it's good enough to not go into 2 colors right away.
Yeah, I think I would probably just take the Dissident here and go for the upside. But I have noticed that there's a lot of times where I play Yoshin Dissident and my opponent is already starting to apply pressure to me where I have to consider trading it off early, and that is not a good place to be. So it's not great. It is a really good card on the battlefield, and it can do some really great stuff, particularly in any type of slower matchup. But if you're facing down pressure, man, your 2-drop has to be able to trade off for something, and this doesn't. Alloy Animist is next. This is the green 1/1, and you can pay 2 and a green to make a non-creature artifact become a 4/4 artifact creature. This card's been trash.
Yeah, you just don't have the mana to waste on this. No. By the time you get to that point, you could just cast, your Boulder Golems and just be winning with actual big things instead.
With just real cards, yeah. Our retro artifact is Ivory Tower.
I almost put this card in a deck.
Really?
I had the Well of Lost Dreams, where when you gain life, you can pay X to draw X cards.
Oh, yeah.
And I had Howling Mine.
Oh.
And I still was like,
wait, how did you not put it in your deck? That sounds so sweet.
It's just still not. I think
you can have all 3 of those cards and just get completely ran over by something.
Yeah, it's just the problem is when your deck's working, Ivory Tower might do something. When it's not working, Ivory Tower's horrendous.
Yeah, it's really, really bad. At least you could sacrifice it to your beloved Power Stone Fracture.
Oh, I do love that.
Our rare
turn on Ivory Tower, turn 2, gain a life, sack it to Power Stone Fracture.
Go. Next is
printing money.
Hostile Negotiations. It's our rare. It's 3 and a black for an instant. Exile the top 3 cards of your library in a face down pile, then exile the top 3 cards of your library in another face down pile. Look at the top cards. Look at the cards in each pile, then turn a pile of your choice face up. An opponent chooses one of the piles, put the pile in your hand and the other one in your graveyard, and you lose 3 life. God, that's a lot of words for a draw.
Yeah, I'm out for that. I mean, it's a card I'll put in my deck if I'm black, but I'm not taking it over something like Power Stone Fracture, my boy.
Right. So you're on Fracture. I would take Yoshin Dissident, but we're in a similar spot there, I think.
Yeah, those 2 are close. I wouldn't fault you for taking either of them.
Okay, so there's those. So let's talk about the format kind of in a big picture, and then we'll dive into some card-by-card discussion as well as some archetypes that we've liked. The first thing that stands out about it, and I think this goes a little bit against possible expectations, is that it's felt very assertive. I think some of the decks that you play would be considered fast, like, aggressive fast decks, but even the ones that aren't, the format just seems to truly reward being proactive, doing board affecting things early and often. This is kind of a normal baseline, but when we saw the prototype cards and the Power Stones, at least part of me was thinking kind of Rise of the Eldrazi, right? Like, right. Oh boy, we're going to be casting some 9-drops in this format, baby. Like, this is going to be sweet. We're going to have some breathing room to kind of develop some type of big board and do some really big splashy battlecruiser type stuff. And that hasn't really happened. The format really does seem to be more about getting on board and smashing your opponent. And I had not looked at the 17 lands data until you and I were chatting before the show, Luis. I like to, just try to get my own head around the format before kind of figuring out what the hive mind thinks. But I'll tell you, here's what the hive mind thinks. So here's the top 10 commons currently. These change around as people learn different things about the format. But number 1 is Scrapwork Cohort. That's the 3/1 that gives you a 1/1 and it has Unearth. Number 2 is Scrapwork Mutt. That's the 2/1 that lets you discard a card and draw a card. And it also has Unearth. Next is Excavation Explosion. That's the red burn spell. Goblin Blast Runner. Now, we were talking about your boy, but this is your real boy here. This is the little guy. What is it, a 1/2 that can get +2/+0 and Menace if you...
Yeah, if you've sacrificed a permanent this turn, it has +2/+0 and Menace.
Yeah. So that guy's number 4. Number 5 is Prison Sentence, which is the what's it called? The arrest. The arrest variant. Next is Aeronaut Cavalry, which is somehow the 4 and a white 3/4 flyer that puts +1/+1 counter on another soldier when it ETBs. That thing's up there. Airlift Chaplain, that's the mill flying thing for white. Gaia's Gift is the combat trick that we mentioned. Overwhelming Remorse, that's our first black card here, is the exile removal spell. And then Ambush Paratrooper is the 2-drop that can pump your team. So if we just take a look at this, rewound out a bit, a full half of these cards are white, including the number 1, and we're giving a white color identity to like Scrapwork Cohort, for example, because you can't unearth it without that. And then the 3 of the top 4 are red. And then there's a green and a black and no blue. But here's the thing. If you've ever listened to one of our episodes where we talk about CABs, theory cards that affect the board state, every single one of these cards fits that description. It's either a creature, a combat trick, or a removal spell. There is no fluff. There's no card draw here. There's no big 9-drop powerful thing. These are all low to the ground, affect the board, get your opponent dead type cards.
Yeah, Boulder Branch Golem is the first prototype card. And it's 11, 12, 13, 14th down. And then there isn't any other prototype card even for quite some time. And
that's the life gain one?
And that's the life gain one. So that even specifically is, I think, because of that.
Mm-hmm. So this format is assertive. This is not a format where you're rewarded for dirtling around and spending time drawing cards and crafting the perfect hand and doing stuff like that. You need to get on the board and smash people. Now, it is interesting, and I want your thoughts on this, Luis. Do you think that it being so early in the format has an effect on, like, are people just kind of doing the thing that's very straightforward and we'll find the clever stuff later, or is this just what we're looking at?
No, people are pretty good at this point. Like, I don't think people are like not getting something that's, obvious or anything like that. I think the reality of the situation is the format's aggressive, that, the top 11 cards are all extremely aggressive, and military discipline is the 11th, by the way, that card.
Yeah, so that's another white card. That would be 6 out of the top 11.
And I think that's what the format is, which that is certainly not what I expected looking at some of the mechanics in the format, but this is how it's shaken out. And when some of the cards that initially didn't look that hot, like Goblin Blast Runner, military discipline, end up being Airlift Chaplain, Aeronaut Cavalry, Gaia's Gift, and all those end up being really strong, then that does kind of shift the balance of power. And overall, I haven't been finding the Power Stone ramp strategy to be a particularly good one. I think Power Stones are good. Like, cards that make Power Stones are strong. Excavation Explosion, making a Power Stone. Almost every deck will have something good to do with that Power Stone. It's actually hard not to. They did a good job of seeding activated abilities, plenty of artifacts you want to put in your deck, all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
The issue is that a deck that's trying to be like Stone Retrieval unit, ramp into 7 to 10 drops, that I don't think is a good strategy.
Right. That has not proven to be consistent enough to win. You can do it. If you hit the right curve, you can slam much bigger things than what your opponent's doing and you can take over, but it's fragile. Right? You need it. This is the classic plight of ramp decks, is that, there's a mix of ramp enablers plus finishers and then something in between to kind of keep you alive or keep your game plan flowing. And if you draw the wrong end of either of those, in other words, if you draw really expensive stuff early in the game, then it sits in your hand and you die. And if you start drawing ramp spells after you have already gotten up to the mana that you need to do it, then you die. And then the quality of your in-between cards matters a lot more, of course, because, you really need something to kind of carry you through. Where if you compare that to like a red-white deck, a white-black deck, any white-based aggro deck, for example, with the type of cards that we're looking at here on this top 10, top 11 list, they just do the same thing every time. And they're cheap cards, generally speaking. You know, the most expensive card on here is technically 5, but it's Overwhelming Remorse, where usually you're paying 3 or 4 or sometimes even 2 for the dang thing. And otherwise it caps out at 4, right? But you know, these are cards that perform exactly what their role is in your deck, draft in and draft out sort of regardless of your draw, because they just don't need much mana. A bunch of them are colorless as well. And the problem is that if these are pretty good, it really puts a crimp on the, you know, ramp deck strategy, because not only do they need to draw their cards in the right order, you're also facing down decks like this that are going to punish them for not doing so.
Yeah. And the cheap, effective cards just getting so much more mileage really does make it so the ramp decks, why are you spending, like you said, the comparison I think you made was really good. Why are you spending all this effort to try to make Mishra's Juggernaut, or sorry, to make your 7-drop card work when Mishra's Juggernaut does the same thing on 5?
Right. It's really tough. I mean, and I think that to me has at least been my experience with the format so far, has just been, you better be doing stuff. You know, I have had success with some of the ramp decks. I have had with blue-green a little bit, and I've had success with black-green, sort of shutting down the aggro approach, like just being kind of rockish is what we would call it, right? Where it can put out a bunch of blockers and removal and just toughness and stuff that it makes it difficult for these decks to get through. But the most success that I've had has been with white-based aggro decks. They tend to do the best.
My first trophy was with a 15-land mono white deck.
Yeah. So I should say the most success that I've had out of one single archetype, I'd say overall the white-based aggro decks have been sort of probably giving me the most wins, but the easily what has stood out to me as the best deck, and I know this is true for you because we chatted about it before the show, Luis, is Red-Black Sacrifice. This is a real deck, man. This is one of those ones that we look for in Limited, right? Because it has kind of a good all-around approach of power level and that kind of stuff. What's your thoughts on Red-Black Sac?
Oh, that's the deck I've won the most with, for sure. I think it's a very consistent, very strong deck. It might be the best overall archetype, though obviously white aggro is very strong as well. Mm-hmm. And Red-Black just has an embarrassment of riches when it comes to removal, when it comes to card advantage, when it comes to a good, cheap, effective cards. Overall, I think it just does all the things that you really want it to do.
Yeah. So what are because one of the things that's really stood out to me have been the synergies at the common level. So many of the common cards are good enough to be playable, right? Like that you can put them in your deck. And then when you just mash them all together, all of a sudden everything clicks and you're doing things that are really a step above what any other deck in the format can do, especially, without the help of rares or mythics or anything like that. Because even the mediocre stuff that we saw has ended up being quite good, like in context. Yeah.
So I think Black Red, the headliner card, as is only right, is the uncommon Junkyard Genius, the 1 red black 2/2, make a Power Stone, sack a artifact or creature, give all your other creatures +1/+0 haste and menace. This card's amazing. Like, when you have an aggressive draw, this card's just completely unbeatable. When you don't have an aggressive draw, this card turns your draw into an aggressive draw. You'd be surprised how many times you play this card and you're maybe a little defensive, or you maybe haven't quite gotten your ground under you, and you're like, oh wow, I'm really close to killing them. Because it just you do so much damage, and their 3 blockers can block 1 creature. It really turns into a lot. And so the Black-Red deck, I think some of the headliners for this, besides the Junkyard Genius, it's just that it's got a bunch of removals. So it's got like Disfigure, Overwhelming Remorse, Excavation, Explosion, Sibling Rivalry as well, if you have enough of the sacrifice cards. So you're pretty, full on removal, Power Stone, Fracture as well. And then you're able to assemble these common synergy cards like Goblin Blast Runner as just a premier 1-drop. It's a 1-mana 1/2, attacks per 1 and maybe a few times, and then it'll frequently be a 3/2 menace, trade up for something that costs 3 mana, or just get a bunch of damage in. Yeah. Often you'll just have 2 of these in play, and on turn 4 you're like, crack Evolving Wilds, because it even counts that. Attack for 6, play something else. and then your opponent's in a spot where you could at any point just get these going and just completely demoralize your opponent.
Yeah, with a card that nobody else wants at a mana cost that nobody else is really doing anything at it. That's a huge upswing.
Yeah, and I think that this card's really easy to overlook, and it initially started that way, but it's one of the best commons. Pendragon Strongbow, a key card for the deck. The 2/3, you can sack an artifact to ping your opponent for 1 or give it +1/+1 till end of turn. Because a big part of this deck also is this package of cantrip artifacts, and this isn't the only deck that wants them. We're talking Ichor Wellspring as the best one. That's the 2-mana ETB draw and when it dies draw.
So good.
Elsewhere Flask, Chromatic Star, the Refractor that you can pay 2 to add a mana of any color. All of these, what they do is they give you a card, so you're not down cards, and give you artifacts to sacrifice and do things with.
Right. Yeah. No. And the Strongbow, particularly eating up these artifacts, has been such a house, right? Because it, when you first play it, you're like, oh yeah, that's pretty cool. But if it's getting through, like every mana you spend to sack an artifact is effectively 2 damage being piled on, and it just adds up really, really fast.
Yeah, so what'll happen is early in the game sometimes they can't really block it because you've got a Chromatic Star in play and they're like, well, I don't really want to trade a creature for that. So you get in some damage. Late in the game, you start looking at like, oh, what if I just sack all my artifacts and kill them? Or you play it, immediately sack something to ping them for 1 so your Goblin Blast Runners can attack, that sort of thing.
Totally.
And once you get enough ways to sacrifice, like Power Stone Fracture, the Strongbow, the Thraxodemon, then all of a sudden Sibling Rivalry gets more interesting, and you can steal something, make a Power Stone, and again end up in a spot where I've gotten Sibling Rivalry with 2 cards left in the pack. No one else wants it.
Totally.
It's not a playable card outside of the black-red deck pretty much exactly.
Right. And then you can pick up 2 or 3 of them. Even cards that like would be really far down on the importance level just do well in this deck, like Killzone Acrobat. That's the 2 and a black 3/2. Whenever it attacks, you can sack creature artifact to give it flying of all things. It's perfect, right? Because this allows you to Sibling Rivalry on just 4 mana, still kill their thing. The only downside, of course, is that you don't get to attack with their thing. But the key here is that each of these interactions, each of these things that we're doing is all focused on damage to the opponent, right? The Killzone Acrobats in the air hitting for 3. The Strongbow is pinging and getting some good attacks in. Your favorite little buddy is getting in with Menace. These things add up a lot, right? Like it is all of a sudden your opponent is like, wow. And now your Sibling Rivalries are just game winners. It's GG if you get to cast it in any capacity. Even if you don't sacrifice the thing, you just steal their creature and kill them with the good old fashioned way. And you also just get these little like Excavation Explosion can go to the head, right? Oh, well, there's 3 damage to your face, make a Power Stone, sack it to the Strongbow. There's 4 damage I didn't have before I started this turn that I didn't even have to go into combat for, right? This stuff happens all the time.
And then when you step outside the like black-red sacrifice themed cards, right? The all the sack cards, the enablers, all that. The other cards are high quality. Emergency Weld, getting back a creature, and getting you a 1/1, a little more material there. Goring Warplow and Blitz Automaton as 2 just very strong prototype cards that are good at pretty much any point in the game. Like there's a lot there that you're going to be really happy with, and you got Mishra's Juggernaut. Scrapwork Mutt is just like the perfect enabler for all this stuff.
Mutt is fantastic in this deck.
Yeah, so I have been very impressed with black-red, and it's just high card quality, lots of removal, really good aggressive stuff, while also being able to play a good control game, high synergy. It just has kind of all the things you really want it to have.
Where are you at on Gixian Infiltrator? That's the 1 and a black 2/1, and whenever you sacrifice another permanent, you put a +1/+1 counter on it.
I'm not a huge fan of it. I mean, there's a reason I didn't put it on the list in terms of key cards, because there's sometimes when you get a couple counters on it and you got some good value, but I don't have it as a high priority card. You just don't end up in a spot where you're able to put enough counters on it that it can meaningfully trade up. Like, I'm not saying you don't play the card. I'm just saying I don't prioritize it.
Okay. And then is that true? Because I don't think I see it on the list either for the, oh boy, I forget the name, but the one that lets you sack stuff to draw a card, sack a creature.
Thraxodemon? Thraxodemon's fine.
Thraxodemon.
it's a solid card, but again, not one I'm like super excited about or anything.
Okay. So yeah, because to me, I think if you haven't drafted this archetype yet, those are two cards that you would think, oh, I want those. And like you said, you can play them, but they don't end up being key to the archetype. Yeah, for me, the really important cards outside of the removal and stuff are Pendragon Strongbow is really, really important. I just think that card is critical to how the deck works. And Scrapwork Mutt. I think that those are the two cards that I really look for that are maybe slightly under the radar right now, but won't be for very long.
So I think Goblin Blast Runner deserves to be in this category from an importance standpoint.
Yes.
But it doesn't get taken at nearly the same rate as the other ones. So I don't worry about it too much.
And what about, you have another archetype you wanted to talk about, right?
Yeah. So blue-red artifacts. This one hasn't come together as often, but I think that there is something here. And this is, you want third path Iconoclast. That's the 2/1 that makes 1/1 soldiers whenever you cast a non-creature spell. You want to play this lower to the ground. Again, you can have some of the Power Stone stuff. You can have your Spotter Thopter or your Blitz Automaton that you're going to end up trying to, ramp into. But mostly you want like Mightstone's Animation, Excavation Explosion, Pendragon Strongbow. This is a really good Tomocool Scrapsmith deck. That's the 2/1 that mills 3 cards and gets back an artifact, which is also perfectly serviceable in red-black, but you don't always have the artifact density to do that. Mm-hmm. And what you're trying to do is basically play a bunch of cheap artifacts. The cantrip artifacts are fantastic here as well. And the best, Coilless Rock is surprisingly good too, the 3/3 flash flying that makes a Power Stone, because often you'll get to eat a paratrooper or something on the way.
Yeah, yeah.
And then you're trying to just play a bunch of low-cost artifacts and artifact enablers like Mightstone's Animation, like Pendragon Strongbow. I kind of consider this a worse version of red-black, but it is a deck that sometimes does come together.
Yeah, a friend of mine, Jen, sent me a picture of a blue-red deck that she drafted yesterday. It had 3 third path Iconoclasts in it. I was like, okay,
yeah, I mean that'll do
sweet.
it.
Yeah, that's a start. Yeah, but you think that this deck is serviceable, but maybe not a super go for it type archetype?
Yeah, I think if you open. But the way I have gotten into this most is either open like a blue bomb and then get past some red cards. Yep. Start with a Excavation Explosion and a Strongbow, and then see a third path Iconoclast or something along those lines in the middle of the pack, or open something like a Saheeli. But black red is very easy to get into. There's a lot of ways to do that. This one is a little bit harder, but I think it actually has some good stuff going. Again, the main thing that I'd focus on, this is why I don't like green blue very much, is blue-red might look like it wants to be the Power Stone control into big artifact stuff. My experience with that has been not very good. Keeping it as like a tempo deck has worked out. This is just a really fast format, and I think that the white decks, if you spend your turn 3 and 4 making Power Stones, the white decks will really punish you for that.
They certainly will. I've been thankfully on the other end of it mostly, but let's talk about some individual cards or some types of cards that have stood out to us. Foundry Inspector. So
one thing I wanted to point out is the retro cards show up, especially the uncommons, a lot. They're effectively part of the format. They're not like masterpieces in that sense. I've still only played against Wormcoil one time ever, but those are pretty rare. But the uncommons, like you just kind of expect Foundry Inspector and Elsewhere Flask to just be part of the format. And
Ichor Wellsprings everywhere. Yeah.
Foundry Inspector is very good. It's 3 mana, 3/2 makes your artifacts 1 cheaper. When you play this on turn 3, on turn 4, sometimes you get to play a 5 mana artifact and you're happy about it. Sometimes you get to do much better than that and play multiple things in the same turn and just really get to go off.
Yeah, I've been impressed by Foundry Inspector for sure. What about Skyfisher Spider, which, by the way, I wanted to see how well the uncommons were doing. And so I just switched over my list.
Is the Spider high up there?
Number 1.
Yeah, so I haven't been drafting a lot of black-green specifically, but I also don't ever pass Skyfisher Spider.
Right.
So, you can end up with that in your black-red deck. You splash it or whatever it is. There's a lot of ways to kind of make that thing work. But Skyfisher Spider is just a great card. Black-green's also just a fine place to be.
Yeah. Black green is well suited to fighting the aggro strategies. It has a lot of reach. It has some life gain. It has a bunch of beefy creatures. It has black's removal spells, and even the fight spells out of green can do a good job of keeping small creatures at bay. And that really is kind of the name of the game. I'm not that surprised to see Skyfisher Spider here. Every time somebody casts it, it's a blowout. I mean, again, you mentioned it at the top, but the Power Stones, they did a really good job implementing these things. They fit into all the archetypes in different ways. Sometimes you're tapping them for mana. Sometimes you're sacrificing them. And here with the spider, you can sacrifice another creature. And when you do destroy a non-land permanent, you can blow up anything, right?
Static Net is a great one to blow up. You get a lot of good value out of doing that.
Totally.
And just to add insult to injury, when the spider dies, you gain 2 to 5 life or whatever it is.
Yeah. So I really like that one. The spider. What about Scrapwork Rager? Wait, which one is that again?
That's the Phyrexian Rager.
Yeah.
With Unearth. This one I don't like. I actually think this card is pretty mediocre.
Yeah, I found the same thing. I drafted the hell out of it thinking, oh, this is just great. And then it just kept feeling like I was falling behind when I cast it.
It's because paying 4 mana for a 2/2 is below curve. It's a beatdown format. And then, sure, you draw a card and you lose a life, but losing a life isn't great. And then unearthing it is just paying a bunch more life and mana to draw a card because you're not adding to the board. You're not, doing anything productive, and you're losing a life. So I'm not saying I don't play Scrapwork Rager in my red-black decks, because I still do. But this is a card that I would not have predicted that I'm taking, the Blast Runner Goblin over that. Not even close.
It says a lot.
On the other hand, though, Mishra's research desk, I actually do like a decent amount.
Oh, this card's been great.
It is ultimately draw one of the best 1 out of 2, then the best 1 out of 2. So it's a draw 2, and you get to look at 4. But also, it's just it's fiddly. It puts artifacts into play. It also lets you use the mana very efficiently. If you were to say hey, I'm going to spend, it's a total of 5 mana, right? It's 2, 1, then 1, then 2, then 1. But it's 5 mana broken up into these 4 different chunks of 1, 1, 1, 2. So you can do it kind of whenever you need to. And it fits into your curve. You play it on turn 1 when you have no other 1-drop, it's kind of like it's free. That mana would have gone to waste otherwise.
Right.
You unearth it and use it on a turn when you don't have anything else to do, that sort of thing. And even just playing it and sacking it to the Pendragon is still fine, right? In the right situation. It just gives you all these things. So I like the research desk. This card has impressed me. And it's similar to Mask of the Jadecrafter. That's the 2 mana. You can X-tap, sack it, make an XX Golem, and it has Unearth of 2 and a green. Great way to use extra mana. Still good, even if you don't have tons of mana, and very good when you do. Cards that let you you scale appropriately are really strong.
Would you play it in non-green?
So, kind of. I would not play it in a deck that could not unearth it. I don't think it's good enough to do that, unless I had some weird deck that had 3 Tomercool Scrapsmiths and was just I need any artifact that I can get, sort of thing. What I have done is play it in decks, and this is something to look out for with a lot of different cards. I have a black-red deck that has an Elsewhere Flask and a Chromatic Star and a Mana Refractor, and it's pretty realistic that I'll be able to add another color of mana at some point in the game.
And that's enough for you to push it over the line for you.
Yeah, if it's in a deck that would also kind of want what this thing is doing, which I think some decks do.
Yeah, it's currently sitting at around, it looks like around 22nd of the uncommons.
Yeah, that's reasonable.
So it's up there. It's okay. I'm going to go through this list a little bit here just to kind of get a sense for it as well, to see if it matches what we said. Because it is kind of interesting that Skyfisher Spider is number 1, where that doesn't fit. It's actually directly against the things that we talked about. Static Net, you mentioned that, so that's a removal spell. Thopter Mechanic, that's the one that dies into a 1/1 and gets bigger when you draw extra cards. Horn Stone Seeker, this one's really good. The 2/2 menace for 1 in a red, and it makes a thing that goes away when it dies. And then our boy, the third path Iconoclast, is the 5th best one. Evangel of Synthesis is the next one. Wow, that's higher than I would have thought it would be. Maybe I just need to draft more blue-black beatdown somehow. Giant Cindermaw, this is back to business. That's the 4/3 trampler for 3 mana. Recruitment Officer, 1 mana, 2/1. You can pay 3 and a white to dig.
Yeah. I mean, efficient cards. Like even though I don't think blue is like the best, Thopter Engineer is just, or Thopter Mechanic is just really great when everyone's playing 2-drops and trying to attack you, because it's a 2-drop that trades and leaves behind a 1/1. That's fantastic.
Mishra's Research Desk is next, so that one's top 10. Zephyr Sentinel, that's a 2/1 flash flyer. Ashnod's Harvester, again back to the aggro, that's a 2-mana 3/1 that you can unearth for 1 and a black. Obliterating Bolt removal spell. And then Combat Thresher, which is a card I like a lot. That's the 2 and a white 1/1 double strike, but it prototypes up to 7 mana for a 3/3 double strike. And either way, when it ETBs, you draw a card. That guy's strong.
So when we're looking at like a game in hand win rate, like anything above 60% really good, like near bomb level, something like that, or at least
not quite
very
bomb
strong.
level, but very strong. Yeah,
like 61%. Winter, like Skyfisher Spider, 62.8%, that sort of thing.
Yeah, these are pretty compact. Like you can go down to number 10 or 11, and you're still at the 60% mark.
Yeah.
So these are all very, very close together. You know, you have to go down quite a ways. Okay, what other cards should we talk about here? Trench Stalker we talked about. What about you? You have Howling Mine on the list. What nonsense are you up to?
Howling Mine's a cute one. I don't. This isn't me saying the card is good, but I do think that you can use it in some decks. If you're, besides the Sentinel Stalwart like tap it down combo, if you're a really low curve deck that can use its mana efficiently, Howling Mine can be strong.
Okay.
I did have it in a mono black deck that had 3 corrupts, and that was pretty good. That same mono black deck. That was the only time I got to play with Howling Mine.
You're playing Necro.
Yeah, I mean exactly. So that card, it is pretty fun. It's a card you're going to get super late, but you are gonna have some success with it, I believe. Man,
you have a Mesmeric Orb on here, and it just tilts me because I played against somebody who, I don't know, they reminded me, the way they played, they reminded me of you. They played like an 80 card Mesmeric Orb deck and played it against me, and I lost to it because I couldn't remove it. And they just had way more cards so they could actually keep casting spells.
Well,
which I find offensive.
So the only reason I bring up Mesmeric Orb, because I had an emergency, had to duck out before we were able to talk about it.
Yeah,
I did want to mention this card is not an F.
Okay.
It's not. I'm not saying this card's great, and in fact, the nature of this format does make the card closer to like
I think
a D.
I gave it an F. Yeah,
you gave it an F. I know. I would probably have given it like around a B as a build around. Are
you out of your mind?
But I think it's probably closer to like a C at this point. So the reason, so the reason Mesmeric Orb is good, or what it can do, is when your opponent is tapped out and has a bunch of permanents tapped, you can play it. They mill for like 8 to 10 cards, and then they can't really do anything, or they get milled out a lot faster, and you're already ahead on cards. Mm-hmm. It's like there are decks that can beat. Now, that being said, a week into the format, we know how aggressive the format is. I'm going to downgrade it once again, but there have been like I played with this card when it was in Mirrodin, and it did have some application. Like,
oh, okay.
Imagine your opponent, you're playing a control mirror, and your opponent just drops Mesmeric Orb in the middle of the game when you were tapped out.
That's what happened.
Yeah, and you probably lost to it.
And then I did a library check, and they had 54 cards still, and I'm like, it's turn 12. Like, what the?
that I don't endorse. But even if we're both playing 40, if you start by a mill for 8 or 10, now you're down to way fewer cards than me. And then what are you going to do? Like tap all your mana for a 7-drop? You can't do that.
Right.
You kind of have to win with what you have in play and not tap much mana, and
that's
it's easy to defend against that. Yeah. I mean, so the card is not a 0. I'm not saying the card is good. And look, when you're playing 1 mana 2/1s and 1 mana 3/2 menaces, yes, you would put any number of Mesmeric Orbs in your opponent's deck. But if you're playing a slower Power Stone deck and you're like, I'm going to tap 8 for a Spotter Thopter, and then they're like, okay, I'm going to play as Mesmeric Orb, you're probably going to lose that game.
So, yeah, I guess I'm just having a hard time figuring out when I would actually put this in my deck. Like, I'm playing a draft, I've got a deck in front of me, and I'm like, all right, Mesmeric Orb, get in there, right? Like, this sounds like a sideboard card.
It is probably a sideboard card in this format, but okay. I do think that it has some applications there. And if you were playing a control deck and needed a win condition, this would have been valid. But again, I think this format's too aggressive to really justify it.
Is Mishra's Bauble not in the format, or what is going on?
That's a bug. It's supposed to be, but it's not on Arena, so it's going to be fixed. That card is going to be fine. It's going to be worse than Chromatic Star because you can't sack it and draw a card to like something else, like a Pendragon Strongbow. Mm-hmm. But it's going to be a card you're probably going to play in all your like low curve artifact decks.
One of the cards that I ran into on the review that I wanted your take on, now knowing what we know about the format, it kind of puts a bit of a damper on it, I would say, but is Mind's Eye. 5 mana artifact. Whenever an opponent draws a card, you may pay 1. If you do, draw a card.
Fine in slower games and kind of bad in fast ones, which this is what this format is. I don't think you can afford, like, here's a good question. In the average game of limited here, would you rather cast Mind's Eye or like a 5 mana 4/4?
Right. And you know, or we can put it on the Juggernaut scale.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Like it's the same mana, you know, what do you want to do with it? Right. Yeah. It just makes it so tough to do that.
I would like you to, good.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I did want you to guess what the 13th most winning rare is with a 62% win percentage.
I don't know. Oh, is it the white card?
It's Feldon.
No.
Card's great.
No, it's just because it's just because the format's so aggressive.
Oh, okay, yeah. It
is true. Like, how much better is 2/2 haste versus 2/2?
A decent amount better, not like a lot better.
Sorry, 2/2 haste can't block versus 2/2.
In an aggressive format, better, but not not tons better.
Yeah,
but
you got lucky.
When you draw a card when it dies, that becomes
got
a very
very
different
lucky.
ball game. All right, we'll go with that. Not that I haven't had my fair share of misses.
Man, it's really tough because I'm looking at the artifacts, the retro artifacts, and there's so many that would have been really sweet and just suck because of how fast. Like I'm looking at Staff of Domination, and it's like don't even try it, right?
Gilded Lotus,
Gilded Lotus, get out of here. Even a few cards that you know could have been like Mind's Eye in a regular format would definitely have a space somewhere. Keening Stone is like LOL. Helm of the Host even feels like really slow, right? 4 to cast, 5 to equip. Like I guess you still run it in the ramp deck or whatever, but man, even that I wouldn't be surprised if you just got smashed. Like they need 1 removal spell and you're done.
I think Helm of the Host is actually probably better in aggro decks. Because you have the breathing room to you curve out, they deal with your stuff, you play this. Now all of a sudden you're also going to win the long game.
Oh, that's true. That's a good point. You can use it as your backup plan.
What's more the scariest thing against you're playing blue-black, you're playing against red-white aggro, and you like disfigured their first play, and then you played a Coastal Bulwark, and then you like
I like where this is going.
You killed their first 3 things. You're at 18, and you're like, wow, we're really doing it now. The long game I'll take over, and then they play a Helm of the Host, and you're like, oh, I don't have a way to kill that. Okay, at some point they're just going to win with that card, you know?
Yeah, no, that's good. One of the cards that I wanted to ask you about, like I kind of cruised through most of them, but one of them that really I was like, I wonder what Luis would say is Goblin Charbelcher.
Do not like it.
Okay, so if you reveal a land, it does nothing, right?
If the first card you reveal a land, it does 0 damage.
Okay,
yes.
And that's just too much. Yeah. Okay.
Part of the problem is you also can't. If you were able to know how much damage you were going to deal, even if it was like you could still deal 0, but if it was like 3 tap, see how much damage you're going to do, then choose a target. Yeah. This card I think would actually be pretty good, but the fact that you don't know means you can't point it at their 4/4. You have to point it at their like 2/2, and sometimes you deal 6 damage to their 2/2, and you're like, wow, that doesn't. I really didn't use that very effectively, you know.
Yeah. All right, that makes me sad, but that is kind of what I figured as well. Speaking of Mind's Eye, you know, there's actually like a grouping of cards that are similar to this, like the Temporal Anchor, one with the multiverse, that type of thing. And it's really sad because they kind of flooded the format with these like draw extra cards or do crazy stuff for a bunch of mana. And they all just seem to be below par because you get smashed by Juggernaut. Yeah.
Though strangely enough, Portal, Phyrexia, and Cityscape Leveler are leading the charge.
Which ones? Oh, the Leveler.
The 9 and the 8 drop, but that's because they both have such a huge impact immediately.
That's right.
They don't fiddle around. You know?
See, and that's the thing. Like, if you're going to draft a ramp deck, you can. I have one with those, but you need those cards. You need the cards that when they come down, they turn around a game that you were losing into one that you were winning. Or else you're just casting some like uncommon prototype creature that's just very large and doesn't really do enough. We talked about Aeronaut Cavalry and Ambush Paratrooper as well.
Yeah, just good white flyers that are a good way to like top out the curve. Obviously, the Aeronaut is literally a 5-drop, but the Ambush Paratrooper gives you something to spend your mana on, and flying is good in this format still. Like it's a good way to get through.
I've been really impressed by the Paratrooper, primarily because it changes combat math. Like having flash is just an absolute game changer for a card like that. You can do it defensively, which doesn't happen super often, but that is a thing. But more importantly, they just do their math and then they're like, go. And then you play Ambush Paratrooper and you've added a flying creature to the board ++1/+1 to everything, potentially. And your opponent just has to face a totally different scenario than the one that they thought they would. And again, I would say very elegant introduction of these Power Stone tokens is used here again as another way, to activate cards that you wouldn't normally think about. Some, white, small white aggressive deck or whatever, you wouldn't really think would care about those, but they end up doing so. And, sometimes you can even double activate and all that. The commands. The green one is the best card in the set currently. Yep. I have never beaten it. It is an absolute shoe-in for the grown test. Like, just never going to not roll my eyes when somebody casts that card.
The floor of making 2 4/4s and giving all your creatures +2/+2 is ridiculous.
It's ludicrous. It's absolutely like when they cast it, you just go, what? Like this was a totally fair game. And now it's just actually over on the spot. And the black one's been really good. I've had it a couple of times now, and it definitely does the things that you want to do. You can use it to sweep the board in many scenarios. It also happens to be very good against these small aggressive decks with destroying all the creatures with power 2 or less. So that's really nice. And then, you can use it for some type of card advantage. But the one that I've used the most is to destroy the creatures with power 2 or less and put some counters and lifelink on a thing and just swing a game back in my direction. And then the white and the blue ones have been fine. I don't prioritize them. I will take them and play them in those colors, but they play to me more like a solid uncommon rather than than the other two that I just mentioned. And then the red one's just been whatever.
Yeah, I was disappointed. I lost a game because I thought the red one was an instant because it read like an instant to me, and it was most definitely not an instant.
Yeah, that's rough. That's day one though. That won't happen again. Any other cards you wanted to mention before we take off?
No, I mean I think this is this format's fun. I've enjoyed a lot of the things that are going on. I wish the Power Stone ramp strategies were like a notch better and that beatdown decks were a notch worse. And I think that's just would add to the diversity in the format, because right now, like, let's just do a quick rundown. Just give me here all your fast answers on a color pair. Red, black.
Love it.
White, blue. Just yes, no.
Love it. Yes, yes, yes.
Red, white.
Yes.
Green, white.
Yes.
Blue, black.
I'm going to say no.
Blue, green.
No.
Let's see. Blue, red.
Yes.
White, black.
Yeah.
And black, green.
Yeah, actually. Yeah.
And red, green is the last one.
No.
Yeah, so that's about basically all the white decks are good because white's so good.
Right.
And red, I don't like red green a whole lot, but the other red ones are good. But then like almost like blue black, blue green, not big fans. Black green, not a big fan. It's like the red and white pairs are good, and the blue and green pairs are not, and the black is okay.
I'm over this format.
I'm not.
You just broke my heart, man.
It's actually been it's a really cunning move on Wizards' part because I'm a mobile gamer now. I don't know if you knew that. I play a lot of Arena on my phone.
I did not know that.
But the latest update makes it so your phone starts glowing like a radioactive cinder as soon as you play a game and a half of Arena. So they've actually gated how much Arena I can play because it uses
burns your hand.
It uses a % of battery every like minute, and then also burns my hands after 5 minutes. So I get like one to two games, and then I have to go do something else or put my phone down. So maybe I would be sick of the format, but they really do a good job of making it so I can't play. I just can't jam on my phone.
I did not know that. That's brutal.
I'm not even making that up. That is a very, very much a thing.
Wow. All right. Well, my voice is about to go, I think. So let's call it a show there. Let us know what you think about the format. Does your experience reflect in the same way that we've played it, where it's very straightforward on the board and a little less of the nonsense is around? Or have you been able to make some nonsense work? If so, let us know. We'd love to hear about it. You can find us on social media. I'm Marshall_LR and Luis is LSV, pretty much everywhere. And you can find everything related to the podcast over at lrcast.com. I want to thank our sponsor, TCG Player and Channel Fireball, for their support of the show. Make sure that you use the affiliate link in the description of this show if you'd like to buy something from TCG Player. And make sure you check out that subscription that they have there as well. That's going to do it for this one. We'll see you next week.
So we mentioned how, we've been under the weather, how Marshall has been sick, all that. And the reality is, and I was reading about this, I of course can never know exactly how true everything is, but it sounds right. And my experience has borne it out, because the last couple of years we had a lot more social distancing / quarantining / not going out / wearing masks. This flu season, this winter season seems like it's a lot more savage than previous ones, because
it does feel that way.
We have not built up we've gotten sick less over the last couple of years, which is good. But the downside of not getting sick is that you don't build up as much immunity. And I know that the strains change every year and all that, but in my anecdotal evidence between me and the people I know, and it also kind of makes sense to me that this year's flu season is going to be a little bit worse. So just be careful out there. I'm sort of not prescribing any sort of behavior. You can do whatever you want, but just be aware that you might, even if you don't normally get sick that often during the winter flu season, this might be a year where you do, and just, try to take it easy and not overextend yourself, because there's a lot going around, and you don't want to miss out on the fun holiday stuff. And you also don't want to, your health is important. So just, I'm hoping that we'll make it through in one piece, but yeah, it's been rough going so far.